Hello there, Rudoculus here. I'm back to speak about a topic which is very close to my heart now and something which is about to give me a new lease on life, essentially. It's very apt that I am a ghost as I speak to you about this topic. I've come a little way down from Riften, looking for the fabled ghost sword, which potentially will come later on in my YouTube channel, where perhaps we go and find it together. But the topic today is shadow integration, which Carl Jung described as the most important work one can do on integrating the dark parts of yourself, the shadow, which a lot of doesn't have to necessarily be empaths, but my experience is as an empath. And essentially, a lot of people, as a survival mechanism, disregard the shadow, judging it harshly as entirely negative towards one's survival. But Carl Jung posits something entirely different. He suggests that integrating it into yourself and accepting it and welcoming your shadow home is actually a very important piece of the puzzle into self-actualization and into an entirely new mode and fresh outlook, fresh way of thinking, fresh way of being. And for me, it's incredibly important because I'm almost there. I am about to cross the finish line into integrating my shadow, which is why it's very apt that I am a ghost, because it involves ego death. And the part of the ego that needs to fade into obscurity is the part of the ego that evolved as a survival mechanism to maintain spiritual loftiness. This is something empaths maladapt to. They feel as though, from a young age, they need to be the mediators of a room, which is why a lot of us can feel the tension in a room and we try and fix it. And integrating the shadow leads you to a new path, a path where you're no longer the fixer, you're simply the observer. Which is why I'm about to take the reaving blow against that part of the ego. So the ego could be seen in this case as the ghost, because it was never truly you to begin with. This was a inflated sense of self which came about through a need to fix, to survive, and to become indispensable, which a lot of empaths suffer with. They feel they have to become indispensable, which in itself is taking away what Carl Jung stated as people's need to actually experience their own pain. Their right to experience their own pain. And so I'm about to take the reaving blow, not to lose the perception, but to lose the pain. My personal pain. My particular pathology with empathy is physical empath, which, if you know, you know. I see it a lot of the times when it's at its worst as some form of curse, but it really truly can become a gift in the long run. But it's very difficult to see that whilst you're living through it. And there's a lot of work involved in making your way to the point where I'm about to be. So maybe in the next video we'll see a change in my demeanor, in the way that I speak. We'll see, and not sure which character I'll create to portray that, but I'll enjoy doing it nonetheless. So My experience, without going too deeply into it, is of pain, a path of pain, a path of absorbing and containing things that were never mine to begin with. Accepting the sophisticated ego's attempt to remain superior to save everyone mentally accepts that that part of yourself was draining you and not serving you. Welcoming the shadow home and integrating the shadow deeply into yourself, which I can feel already, thanks to the work that I've been doing. The methodologies that I've been using to get there involve spirituality, they involve Buddhism, meditation, namely metta meditation, which is loving kindness, which, funnily enough, doesn't do what you think it would. I mean, it does do what it says on the tin, but it also does something unexpected. I've had to do 6 of these metta meditations to get to this point where I'm about to cross the finish line. I've done 5, I have 1 left. What do I mean by it does something unexpected? Well, it allows you to see that you can emit love and peace and want the best for people, for beings, starting small in a room, expanding out to your street, to your town, expanding again to your country, expanding out to the world, and then expanding out to the universe. You can wish well to all beings in the universe, be they of this mortal coil or otherworldly, without actually taking on their pain. Their pain which was never yours to carry. Carl Jung said that the shadow is 80% gold, which means accepting its capacity to do harm and choosing not to. That 20% of shadow, understandably, your ability to cause harm to others. This is something that, in the early stages, the empath fights against, sees as a weakness, and sees simply all the virtuous things as being the solution, when interestingly it's not. Accepting your capacity to do harm in Buddhism is the acceptance of one side of the Buddha is the light, the angel, the other side the demon, the devil, right down the middle. This is just slightly different from that, but the methodology and the understanding is essentially the same. You're accepting both parts as the whole. So, with that, brings me a little bit further down to the solutions and the meditations, alongside other practices, which I'm not going to go into in this video. But there is another point I'd like to make, which is that a large part of accepting this and the work that needs to be done is also very, very liberating, in the sense that, I don't know if you have done chakra work or anything like that, anybody listening, but the solar plexus is the gut, which is where the body actually holds on to and stores trauma, physical trauma. And when you do these practices, whatever it might be to get you there, because there are surely other ways to integrate the shadow which I'm not aware of, but this is just my path. This is just the way I've managed to walk up to the gate, and I'm about to open it fully, but also in a way close it fully. So digest the duality of life in that. But yeah, a lot of it is relaxing that energy, allowing the body to flow like water, allowing your digestion to catch up, and allowing your soul to release the tension. I found my jaws unclenching a lot on a day-to-day basis. And accepting the energy back in and allowing it to recirculate as a protective psychic shield. This is very important. Rather than that energy being an open candle, an open torch that you've left out for any passerby to pick up, and that causes you to then carry their burdens, rather than the energy being dispersed and scattered, ego death allows for the energy to come back, to circulate. Grounding is very important in this stage, at all stages in fact. And the relationships that no longer serve us begin to eviscerate. They begin to burn to the ground and turn to piles of ash. Now, Carl said that many empaths see this as a very difficult, very painful, very confusing time, without realizing that it's actually their liberation. I suppose this would be ones in his clinical practice, who he actually helped face to face, who he actually built his stores of information on, his hamsters, if you will. But I see it as incredibly peaceful, an incredibly peaceful time in my life where I'm just going back to the original self. And funnily enough, it's work on the inner child, but me as a child was very introverted, very in need of my own space, and could spend hours and hours just wandering Skyrim, completing quests. You know, I could start and begin a character and go from start to finish with no interruptions, with no real need to create a new file, a new save game straight away. It was only when I completed it that that behavior started to exacerbate the alternate tune mentality that ESO players suffer with. But that's also not a bad thing, expression creatively. And I feel I'm going back to that. I feel I'm going back to a place of solace, a calm, still lake. As those relationships burn down, a fresh outlook and reconciliation with the inner child, old memories start to resurface, and the inner child finally is at peace and protected. These memories aren't there to haunt. They're there to guide, to re-establish, and to teach, to show that path back, the path back to self, and the path back to protection. And now, where will I be after this video? After I've done my final method meditation? Well, I imagine that it will be a lifelong journey, and though I may achieve the empowered empath stage of my life, I will need to continue work. I will need to continue practices that have got me here in the first place. And there's a final sage I'd like to drop, which is the empowered empath becomes a sun. Protected, shielded psychically, the sun warms others with its presence. When the intuition is made of love, kindness, and truth. But it burns anybody who dares to come too close. Through malice, through envy, or any other shadow quality that has led them to attempt to pull the levers. The levers become deep buried inside, no longer accessible. And so, with great excitement, that is where I'm heading. And finally, I guess I'll just leave you with some age-old Buddhist wisdom, which is something that has really helped me more so to remain calm in the process of all this, which is a mantra, essentially, which is Mani Padme Hum. That's the official Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, or the Himalayan Mani Padme Hum, which means and translates to, in English, Hail Jewel in the light, in the lotus. Hail Jewel in the lotus. Thank you so much for watching this, if you have. I hope you have a great day. Peace be with you. Namaste.